For those who don't know that story, I guess I'll tell it now real quick. What Mind Your Monsters is talking about. I did an interview for the Indie Sellers Guild. They had a virtual conference, and there was an interview on that I got invited to do. And they asked me kind of why did I start goimagine, right? Like what was the lead up to why this even started? Because to be honest, I'm not a maker. I'm not an artist. I'm a techie. I've been in software for about 12 years. And I'll try to shorten this up. But the short story is I had another company before this that I started in 2015. It was an insurance app that we built on Salesforce. And it was successful. I grew the company fairly well. And like any CEO of any company, worked my buns off. I was working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. All the stress that comes along with a growing company. I think by the time I had exited the company, we had 30 employees, something like that. Grew the company to a $47 million valuation. So definitely grew it. But one thing that happened to me as I was growing the company is the more we grew and the more money we raised, because we always brought in new investors to raise money for the next round and for the growth, the bigger the emphasis became on just profits for the sake of profits. The emphasis was just making money. How do we focus on the money? And I'm sure, like a lot of you, money is a means to an end, but money has never been my primary motivator in life. You know, I get inspired to do things. I enjoy doing things. I think makers and artists are very similar in the fact that the reason you do what you do right now is not because it's the quickest way to make money. No one becomes an artist because it's a quick way to cash. You do it because you love it and you want to do it. And you're called to it. And for me, it's always been being an entrepreneur. I've always enjoyed business. But it got to the point where with our board of directors that I saw our vision being challenged. And it was all because of money and revenue and growth. And I was starting to burn out over that. I was starting to burn out over the fact that I was working so hard just to make the shareholders potentially more money. And it really all came to a head for me when I went to a conference in San Francisco, where it was a huge conference for Salesforce. You know, one of the biggest conferences there is. They had like Bill Gates speaking at it, that sort of thing. And one of the vendors that we worked with there invited me out to a restaurant to eat that night. It was like a Michelin 3-star blah, blah, blah restaurant. It's way fancier. I am not a fancy restaurant guy. This was way fancier than I've ever been to. But the other thing is that if you know San Francisco, it's not just full of rich people. There's also a really large homeless population in San Francisco, which really is a stark contrast where you see all this money and all this poverty in one place. And I'll never forget going to the restaurant, walking the blocks from my hotel, passing a homeless person, a homeless family, a homeless mother with her child. As I'm walking in a nice suit to go eat, I kid you not, a $700 meal, which is just stupid because no meal should be $700. But this was the type of fancy, ritzy place it was. It got to the point where I couldn't even focus on the meal. I couldn't enjoy the meal because I knew being in the restaurant that on the other side of that wall was a mother with a child who was literally begging for food, as I was in here with all these other people eating ungodly expensive food. And that was the day that I finally, after time, before that, hold on a second. Hey, Jack. Hey, Jack. I'm in a meeting right now. Okay, thank you. Again, it's a half day here and my kids are home. So ultimately, I had been thinking about an idea of a philanthropic marketplace for years. And it just got to the point where that night I was like, I'm going to do it. I'd been thinking about it. I had not pulled the trigger. And then from there, I went back to my hotel room and I purchased the domain goimagine.com. That was in end of 2019. I literally went to my hotel room. I bought goimagine.com, Steph Romke, who's here, I had been talking to about this concept. I think that's when I called her and told her I was doing it. Yeah. And Aaron, you're right. $700 for a meal is stupid. It's stupid. It doesn't make sense. But it was this type of lavish restaurant. And for me, it was a sign that I was like, I'm not meant to be here. Like I was uncomfortable. It wasn't, I didn't even enjoy the meal. It was kind of like, while all these other people, and all of them are good people. I'm not going to insult anybody, all good people, but very much all enjoying their different paired glass of wine with a different paired snail with gold flakes and whatever fancy food it was. It was too much for me. And so, as much as we're creating a marketplace for makers and artists, I think the real crux of this is the fact that I think there's a better way to build the online economy. And I've talked about this before. The concept we're building on goimagine isn't just for makers and artists. We're going to prove a concept that when makers and artists rally together and we show the world that a marketplace can be a force for social good, what that's going to do is have copycats come out in a good way. You're going to have the Uber to save the rainforest. You're going to have the eBay to cure cancer. You're going to have the Airbnb for disaster relief. When we prove that a marketplace can focus on the good of the vendors and focus on using these effects between buyers and sellers to make money that then come back into society through charity, it can change a lot of things. And yes, for us, we're makers and artists and we're focusing on handmade. But the concept for the philanthropic marketplace, that can apply to everything. And if you haven't noticed, marketplaces are the future of the internet, right? Because when's the last time you went to a hotel's website to get a hotel room? You don't. You go to Expedia.com or you go to hotels.com. You don't go to the hotel's website to get a hotel room, right? Well, why is Expedia taking all that transaction money between the two people connecting, like Airbnb does? So I'll get off my high horse here. That's the story that Mind Your Monsters was mentioning. And the only thing that stops this from taking off is human skepticism and cynicism. That's the reality. That's the only thing that the reason goimagine won't become the next big thing that's helping the world is because people didn't rally, right? And that's all it's going to take. But people are people, right? People are skeptical and people are looking for instant gratification. And we're in a world of instant gratification. And the only way you get instant gratification is when a really large company or investor puts billions of dollars into something. That's where you see something come out of nowhere. A good example would be Threads. You guys are all familiar with Threads now. That's like the new Twitter, but Facebook owns it. Threads. That came out of nowhere, right? It was like one day it was a massive launch, and now Threads has tons of millions of users. But Facebook owns it. And Facebook put tens of hundreds of millions of dollars into it. And they had all the user base from Facebook and Instagram to flood into it. So Facebook owns it. And I think most people would say, I wish Facebook didn't own that. But the only way another Twitter would come along that's socially good wouldn't come from a billionaire, because the billionaire is focused on their bottom line, or shareholders are focused on their bottom line. They're not focused on community. But the people can change that. I firmly believe that people can change that. But it can happen only when we all come together. And I think everyone who's listening right now, I think there's comments here as I just talk into the wind. Thank you, Signature Enchantment. Thank you. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks. I'm reading the comments now. Thanks, Team Reed. I really appreciate that, Team Reed. Yeah, well, and part of the reason we have our $2.50 plan is because we wanted to make it so affordable that people who just want to get behind this and see something special happen in the world, it's $2, right? That's kind of the idea around the $2 plan. It's this entry level plan that really you can support what you want to see in the world. Because I think most people you talk to would want a handmade marketplace. So from that standpoint, we have tons of people that want it, and most people want to see a philanthropic marketplace. But sometimes people put their money where their mouth is, and $2 a month isn't a ton of money to put towards it. Thank you, Jake Caniglio. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. And I wanted to, and I do want to thank all of you here right now. I know it's over 2:00. It's past 2:00, but everybody who's listening to this right now is part of this journey. And I want to be very clear about that. We did a thing before called Founding Makers, and everybody who's joined us and everyone who's listening, this is a community effort, and it's being supported by everybody. We have no big, rich venture cap investors, and nor do we ever want to, because as soon as you take that money from the devil, you're now owned by them. And so as long as the community helps us grow and supports us, we will be able to support the community, right? That's kind of how it works. I mean, the reality is that's how every business works. Businesses support those that are supporting them. If investors are shareholders, the business will focus on what the shareholders want. If a business doesn't have shareholders and it's their vendors, in this case, supporting them, well, now the business can focus on the vendors and focus on the buyers, right? Because they don't have a big daddy over their head telling them what they have to do because they own part of the company. Instead, they can focus on what's actually meaningful. And that's where we're at. I mean, that's the beauty of where we're at right now. Nobody owns us. We own us. This is our company. This is not a Wall Street company.